Hi everyone, I'm Heather Poduska, founder of the Brand Star Academy, where I teach entrepreneurs how to be powerful, profitable speakers and create their own celebrity personal brands. Welcome to Thrive, the show where I bring you tips, resources, and people to help you create a more abundant life and business. You're in for high value content coming to you from industry leaders who are growing their business, making an impact, and rocking their brands. And I'm so excited to have my guest here today, Wendy Jo New. Wendy is the owner of Wendy Jo New Metal Designs. She is a goldsmith who produces fine contemporary jewelry and other metal designs. After a long-term career as an educational policy analyst and consultant in Washington, D.C., Wendy moved to the Boston area where she gradually shifted her career to being a goldsmith and has built a successful business selling her work throughout the country in galleries, shows, and to private clients. In addition to teaching metalsmithing courses, which has allowed her to continue with a focus on education, Wendy also recently accepted a board position of the International Women's Jewelry Association. However, designing and fabricating engagement and wedding rings and other custom pieces is particularly meaningful to her and to her clients. Welcome, Wendy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you here because we actually know each other.
We do. This is exciting for me too.
Yeah, and it's been really fun because we've known each other a while, and to watch your business grow and evolve, it's been really exciting to see that. So I want to jump into how your business has changed and grown. But first, how did you go from being an educational policy analyst in Washington, D.C. to becoming a goldsmith?
Well, I didn't anticipate this or plan it, actually, when we moved to Boston. I actually continued my policy career when we moved to Boston as a consultant and happened to see a little ad for metalsmithing courses, real metalsmithing. I wanted to use fire tools, something I'd always wanted to do, but where I lived and what I did for my undergraduate and graduate schoolwork didn't allow me to. You had to be in a university-enrolled art program. But when we moved to the Boston area, I saw that little ad, went to an evening class. It was once a week for 3 hours a night, that one day a week. I was working full-time, traveling for my work, raising my children. The hustle-bustle life without that, but I loved it. I knew I always wanted to do it and just continued taking classes. And after my first year, I was hooked. It's a dangerous sport.
Literally too, right?
Literally. And participated in a small little show just for fun. I did have a little bit of work, never anticipating that it would become a different career.
Wow. So you didn't start it going like, oh, I'm going to become a goldsmith and a jewelry designer. So it was just like a side thing.
It was a side thing completely. And because I thought I would do my educational policy work for my life. My heart was in it. I still love it. I miss it. Started doing it, but was able, as the kids got older and we had put our roots down, and as we were able to save more, even with saving for college for the kids, I was able to take a few risks and not work full-time in my other career. And I was asked to teach where my studio is and took them up on it. I loved it. And over time, just gradually shifted, and it got to the point where, although unanticipated, I'd say about 8 years ago, made the cut and decided to do it full time. Took the chance, knowing I could always go back. I always kept up on my laws, and it turned into what I do.
Wow, it's a really interesting thing because a lot of people are looking for their passion, and they have this big thing in their head, like this is going to be my passion, or what's my passion? And it sounds like you have more than one passion. You also love educational policy, but this kind of blossomed. Would you say that's true?
I would say that's accurate. Yeah, it wasn't. I loved what I did. I love this too. It's completely different. But sometimes I'm pretty conservative when it comes to risk taking in terms of career and studies. And this was a big move for me to do it.
So how did you know that this, and not even monetarily, but just inside your heart and inside your mind, how did you know that this was the direction that was going to take you forward and that you were going to the most degree, let go of the educational policy? What about that moment, or how did you know that that's where you were going to go next, besides just liking it? Because you had to let go of something that was a really big career.
Yeah, it was a little scary to really say, I'm done. I'm not going to go look for another consulting contract. I think it was just maybe the challenge of the unknown. I really did love it, and organically, it sort of just became full-time. The teaching gigs, the shows that I started doing, private clients, it really took up time.
Yeah.
And I found while reading a really dry regulation or writing one on financial bookkeeping for a particular school district, I was designing a beautiful ruby and pearl earring in my head.
Yeah.
That was probably the sign.
That's a good sign when you start to daydream about your side hustle.
It was really taking over, so I just decided to go for it.
That's really cool. So what would you say to somebody who is just starting down that path and they want to explore something else? They're not sure if they should dive in, they're not sure if they should tiptoe in. What would you say to somebody else?
I would say really know what your finances can handle. Really know that you have, it wasn't like I didn't have a plan in place because I already had positive experience with selling in galleries, selling at shows. So they were, I guess, confirmations that yes, I could do it. Know that, but I would also say stay true to what you really want to do. Let's say for something that I am doing, don't change your designs, don't change the people you want to sell to just because you know that works for someone else. If it's not what you're good at doing or your heart's not in it, I think that would show through. So I think I would just say stick to your heart, really, but know your skills.
I love that answer, and you have a really specific aesthetic to your designs. You're wearing your earrings now, they're so adorable, and is that your necklace too?
Yes.
How did you know that you had talent to do this?
I think when I started doing it, I knew I had a good eye.
Because obviously you do. I mean, you have a lot of talent.
Thank you, I appreciate that. My dad's an architect. My mom is an artist, a painter. So it's not like art didn't run in our family. I always did the music route, but music is also big in our family. I am much more analytical in how I do everything in my life. So it was more the engineering and the three-dimensional way I thought of things, and that really does come through in all my jewelry. There's definitely geometric theme to everything. No matter how I try to change it up just to try something, that always comes back into it.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Even when there's something that's more organic, it's really an organic, geometric, complementary shapes, a lot of 3D work, and so I think I go in with it as a 3D design, more engineering feat. That is artistic. It's just a different way than freehand drawing, let's say. So I think that just naturally comes through in how I've always been.
So take us back a little bit further to when you were younger, and I'm still curious of the goldsmithing, like how that popped into your head, and how you said I always wanted to do it. When did you know you wanted to do that?
So from as long as I can remember, I actually really loved stones. Gemstones, the unique way that those were highlighted in jewelry. I just always have loved that. It's not that I had a lot of jewelry growing up. I loved looking at my grandma's stuff, and she didn't have a lot either, but I just always was drawn to that. We would go to the Smithsonian, on a family vacation, and my whole goal was to see the Hope Diamond. After seeing it, I was like, it's not what I had thought it was after all that anticipation. I think I just have always loved that. Never acted on it till later, though.
It was so funny. I think that those things get implanted in our subconscious very early on. And, maybe some association to somebody that we love, or, however it gets there, and then it blossoms. It can blossom 20 years later. I don't know. I remember as a kid in the 70s, we had these, they were like, I don't know, we got them at like Wall Drug in North Dakota. They were these placards, they were like bingo cards, and in each square it had a different rock, or they weren't like diamonds, but they were just rocks, and they had the names. I just remember like always looking at that. And
there's something, I think it was because I loved gems, the translucence and transparency of anything. I had like a clear red comb. We had an Alvin and the Chipmunks album that was clear
I
red.
remember that one.
I
my
was
gosh.
drawn to all that. So think of that. That goes like
Wow.
garnets are my favorite. I think that something
And you're
about
wearing red now.
something about that and how light refracted. That just has always been something I was drawn to.
That's so cool, and that now that it's in your aesthetic now, and I love what you're saying because it also speaks to brand, that you find your lane, and that lane is a combination of your expertise and your personality and your passion, and the more you stick to that, you start to build your recognition, your brand, which is what you did.
And I think that's absolutely true. When I do shows and people come, and especially new people, and it usually is new, who come to different shows, and the things that comes out of their mouth is, wow, your aesthetic is just so clean and crisp and geometric. And I had not thought of it that way until so many people said it. It confirmed really with what I did, not realizing that's what I was doing.
And you have a specific style that people, like when I see something scroll down on Instagram, because I follow you on Instagram, but I'm like, that's Wendy Jo. I know. There are other things other jewelry that sometimes go through, but I know yours immediately because it has a specific style, it's a different look. So it helps to build your recognition.
Yeah.
And then people start to seek you out and ask you to do specific work. Can you talk about that, like how you transitioned to doing sort of more custom things? Because I think the way that you've talked about it before, that I've heard you talk about it, it really warms my heart. And so tell us a little bit about that.
So one of the things, even with the work I do in shows and galleries, I like one of a kind. I don't want everyone to have the same thing. I never wear unless it's just a standard gold chain. I don't go for the typical stuff that the rage. I really like a custom thing. So when I first started out, of course, it wasn't as complicated and high-end necessarily as what I do now. But people sought me out for the style, and I would only take on what I knew I could do well, like professionally. And over time, just so many people started coming to me with their family's old jewelry. They loved the gemstones, but the style wasn't for them.
Yeah, that happens a lot, I think.
It really does. It's either not your style or it doesn't fit at all, or you would never wear it, or you're nervous to wear it, whatever the reason. And but they wanted something designed with those gemstones. So they had memory of their loved ones, whoever it came from, but something styled just for them. And in fact, the first very high-end commission was from a good friend of mine who lives here, and she had diamonds that were sitting in the safety deposit box from a grandma and an aunt, and really wanted a really nice ring designed with those stones to go with her wedding band that they got when they got married really young. So I had to make a complimentary ring to go with that, but with fairly large diamonds, but to the specifications that she wanted. She didn't want them raised up too high, like too flashy. So I came up with designs, and she was really the first person that I did a high-end commission for, still a close friend. She wears it all the time. And that was so much fun. It was a challenge.
Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah. Well, because it's somebody's sentimental thing.
Yeah, and but a real challenge. And when it was done, I was like, wow, this is really a way I want to go.
Yeah.
And over time, it's really been by word of mouth, or me saying that to someone when they come to see me at shows, because I now have higher end things in my cases.
Right.
And they say, oh, we've been wanting to do wedding rings. Do you do that? And I'll say, yes, let's talk, and we'll meet and design something really specifically that's meaningful to them.
Right.
Obviously my style, or they wouldn't have come to me for that, but for what they want. So it's building by word of mouth, really.
And I love that because, as you said, those diamonds were just sitting somewhere. And I think that happens to people is they get these pieces passed down, and it's not relevant. The style isn't modern or relevant. So instead of like having it close to them, physically and something that they would wear, it's sitting somewhere.
Right.
So it's really nice that there's a way now for people.
And it's being used, and it's something they could always pass down
to
someone else, and they could either keep it that way or do whatever they want with it.
Yeah.
So it's fun for me. It is definitely challenging in terms of offering up designs. Like I get from them a little bit of what they like and styles. I ask them to bring photos just to give me an idea, to start from ground zero without knowing people, especially if it's strangers, is very tough.
Yeah.
But that helps me narrow it down. And then coming back to them with, drawing is not my forte. Three-dimensional drawing is, but it's the time it takes to do that. You want to just give sketches and ideas and then help people narrow down. So I'll do those, but I'll do really quick wax models to really, a lot of people can't see on paper two-dimensional.
Right.
It's very
Right.
tough to envision. So
Right.
I'll do a three-dimensional, maybe up to 8 designs.
Wow.
It's worth the time.
Yes.
Because it helps really people narrow down. And then we'll go with 2 of those and then really narrow it down and go for the real thing.
That's really cool. So how long have you been doing this now with your business? 8 years?
I've sold stuff for, I'd say maybe 16 years, but not at all to the scale of what I've done for maybe the last 8 years. Because when I switched over and really decided I was going to stop doing educational policy and do this full time, the goal was to really make it a new career, not only successful in what I like to do and people liking what they get, but really to make a salary off of that thing too. So I'd say 8 to 10 years full force in building it. And custom work has been over a longer period of time, but in the last 8 years, really, that's been the buildup of that more.
So what do you think has been, so you've been doing it for a while and you've been gradually growing?
Very gradually.
What have been some of the things that have helped you stay the course? Things that you've said, yes, I'm keeping this in my toolbox, that this is, I would recommend to do other people who are trying to create that sustainable, that's what I would call it, sustainable success.
I would say know what you need to get further training on. Know not to, I've been very deliberate in not expanding too quickly. I wanted to have full control over everything, the design, the fabrication, I do it all. I sometimes go to a stone setter if there are very difficult stone settings and with someone's stones that I know I have a source who's done that his entire career. That's all he does. I will sometimes, but I always let the client know that first. But otherwise, I want to have full control. I don't want to hire other people to outsource. At least at this point, I might have to in the future. But the goal was to keep it contained. So for someone else, know what you can handle. The worst thing, especially in something like this, is to take on too much. You can't fulfill the orders, or they're not at the 100% quality that you want. Because word spreads in the art world really, really fast. So that would be another piece of advice. Do what you could do and do it well.
Yeah, and I think that what you said is really important because you were talking about the actual talent, the craft, the deliverable. Like, you're not going to outsource your talent. But what about things like marketing things or social media? Would you suggest that people start to, as you move up in your business, to outsource those kinds of things?
I think everyone should do if they really don't know how to do social media or have the time it takes to do some, because it's essential these days. It really, it's absolutely a must, especially in jewelry, artwork, well, any retail, as everyone knows. It's extremely important. If you don't know how, I would absolutely recommend hiring someone. I've done my own so far. I've hired people, each iteration of my formal website, I've hired people. I don't know how to do coding or any of that. It's time to do the next every so often because technology changes. It's time to revamp the e-commerce platforms. I most likely will do some of it myself, but certainly hire someone to help me. Photography for the formal photos costs a fortune. It's worth it on some photos. Yeah, if you don't know how to do something that's essential to the business, I would definitely, there's nothing wrong with hiring someone to do that.
Yeah, and of course, like what you do is so special and so customized. Of course, you're not going to outsource that part of your business because that's your genius, right?
I think so.
Yeah, of course, of course.
No, in fact, because I am looking to, it's time to evolve my website one more time, and I've reached out to fellow jewelers and people who have certain types of sites to ask them, did they do that on their own? Did they hire someone to help them? Who would they recommend? Because I have to see if I start going in on my own and it's taking over my life and I can't concentrate on what I want to do, I will absolutely go find someone to help me.
Yeah, and that's another thing that you bring up is community. So how important, like you are part of a community of jewelers, right? Or goldsmiths or?
I am. One of the nice things of where I have my private bench, it's also a metalsmithing school, but we have private studio mates in half the building, a school, and we're a pretty well-known school around the world, but particularly in the Northeast and actually across the United States. So there's an instant camaraderie of people, just friends I've made, but also in the teaching world, that end of people in terms of gallery outreach, associations you could get yourself involved with. So I've been very fortunate that that happens to be right nearby and where I work.
Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast, and I think the name of the book was The Proximity Principle.
Oh, I've not heard it. I'll have to read it.
Yeah, but it talks about that, about how important it is if you want to do something, to surround yourself with people who are also doing that thing. And it sounds like you have that community built in where, you can go for different resources and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or is it time for me to hire a web designer or not?
Yeah, it's definitely important. And there are people who have taken different routes. They've opened up their own galleries, or they've decided, I really don't like doing shows. Some people don't. I love it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time when you're doing it. But meeting the people one-on-one, I really enjoy that aspect of it. And I think that's been a positive for my business. That's how I've attracted almost all my clients.
Well, because you're so friendly too.
I just love it. I've always been a people person. You're wiped out at the end of it, the show, but to me that's worth it, so I stick with it.
Yeah. So what would you tell people? I think that there's this mentality for a lot of creatives that you can't make any money being creative. You can't make money as an artist. And obviously you are successful in building your business. What would you say to people who have that mentality?
I would say either switch that mentality or you won't make it. You really have to say, I'm going to make this successful and find the tools to do it. I wouldn't say everyone has that acumen, or maybe they shouldn't be in it if they're really not going after the right things. The art world is not the most lucrative. It is for some people. That doesn't mean you can't make it. Yeah. I do feel that it's been an asset to me that I was in a different career. I am very analytical. I've dealt with money, not just my own business, but dealing with billions of dollars for the type of work I did. I was working in that realm. That is definitely a plus on my side. If I started from the very start, I don't know if I would have known what would be the proper route to go, or that indeed I could make money. I've on purpose kept it multifaceted. Of not just doing custom work, or not just doing shows, or not just galleries. I've built it where I have all that together along with the teaching, classroom teaching and private teaching. And the private teaching is actually a decent money source. I love it, and it's great because I could cater the teaching to exactly what that person wants to do. But putting all those together really has built it into a full career. I think one of those at a time, maybe it wouldn't have turned into that.
Well, someone coined the term a portfolio career, that you have a portfolio career that you actually, and I think a lot of musicians, artists do that. You have different streams of revenue that are coming in that are all under the umbrella of artist, of working artist, or working creative. And it sounds like that's something that
that's a perfect description. It really is a portfolio.
Yeah.
That became full, which is really nice.
That's what you want, right? Yeah. That's right. And you kind of answered the question for me, but I was going to ask you a little bit, just briefly, if you could talk to us about what you did as an educational policy analyst and how that did, I mean, you said a little bit, but how that did inform you as an entrepreneur to go from that career and
well, I always wanted to work in educational policy. I first, though, was an educational therapist. I taught science and language arts, but I worked in a neuropsych unit, working with emotionally impaired 7th through 12th graders. So it was very intense. I loved it, but always wanted to do the policy on a national level. I wrote my essay to do that, to get into graduate school for educational policy, planning and administration, and I did exactly what I said I was going to do. Wow. So when I moved to the DC area, which was right before we got married, My husband was offered a job there unexpectedly. We had planned on moving there a year later. I said, take it, because we're moving there anyways for what I want to do. I worked in research for a bit, first on special ed and technology, national level, and then got a job at the U.S. Department of Education in elementary and secondary education program in Chapter 1, which was Title I, Chapter 1, then turned back into Title I. It's the largest federally funded elementary and secondary program in the country. It still is, that provides supplemental funding to most districts in the country to help kids who aren't performing at the level they should. So that is the program I got hired into. Loved it. It allowed me to connect with various other divisions there, which were my background: special ed, language. I know Spanish was a minor of mine. English as a second language, because ours was the biggest program. Did that and thought I was going to continue that with the department when we moved to Boston. It was in the dinosaur age of telecommuting.
Oh my goodness.
It got, I won't give the story, but it did not work out as expected. And I had to make a snap decision. At a certain point, we had little kids, just moved to the area, knew nobody, but maybe 2 people. And I said, well, I'll do my own consulting in the exact same thing. I was fortunate to know all the directors in every state and state superintendents, and sent out a letter to all, including the State Department here, and I knew the person. And literally the day later, I had work. So did that, continued with exactly my knowledge, doing pretty much the same thing, but from the other side. Until 8 years ago, I stopped.
That's amazing, and wow, you are such a smarty pants.
So, but in terms of like setting up and being entrepreneurial, it was by unexpected design. I had to.
Yeah.
We were at the point I really did have to work. I wanted to work. I loved what I did.
Yeah.
With little kids in a new area, it was by panic, basically. I just did it.
Yeah, and then you had that divine moment of like seeing the little ad for the goldsmith thing.
And then did that too on the side while also establishing a consultant business on my own. I didn't want to hire any staff for that one either. So I think it was out of necessity that I did it and built it, but that did help me for sure with this new endeavor. Because I had experience of like how it works, how to do contracts, all that kind of thing.
That's awesome. And the other thing that I hear is that you had community, like you had a network, you had built up your network, you knew all these people in these different states and these superintendents, so it wasn't like when you finished, you're like, who do I talk to?
Right.
So I think that's a really important lesson.
Yeah, it was basically continuing on just from the other, a different funding stream and how I would get my work, but it was on the same topics. Still work with the same colleagues. I still keep up with all the colleagues.
That's so nice.
So it's really been an interesting road to this road.
Yeah, well, and I always think that, when somebody, I always talk about in branding that it's, those old Reese's commercials where the woman has the peanut butter and the guy has the chocolate and then they smush together and then they get the Reese's. And I think everybody has that we all have our Reese's moment where, maybe we pivot or we have a career change, and then it's kind of like how those things come together that make us uniquely who we are.
I think so. Yeah, it really has been serendipity. I think I mentioned that to you, that if you had asked me 20 years ago if this is what I'd be doing, I would have laughed. Yeah, it would have not even been on the radar.
But it probably would have made sense at some level.
It would have been. I would say, "Wow, that sounds really cool."
I'm going to be so cool in 20 years.
But that's not what I do.
So, if people want to find out more about you, if they want to see your designs, if they want to inquire about custom work, how do they find you? I know you're on social media. What are you on social media?
I have my own Facebook business page, Wendy Jo New Metal Designs. My Instagram, Wendy Jo New Metal Designs. I have a website, of course. It's www.wjnmetaldesigns.
Okay, cool. And we'll put that in the show notes too, so people can find you.
And then on my website, there's on my front page, I always list the upcoming shows, galleries I'm in, upcoming classes I'm teaching. On my social media, and I try to post fairly regularly.
Yeah, you're good about that. You're very good about it.
But it always has my tag, my hashtag, all that stuff, so people could find it that way as well.
Yes, excellent. So we will make sure that it's in the show notes. And I just want to thank you for coming on and acknowledge you for bringing your art to your business and your past career to your entrepreneurship, and how you bring that together to serve with your highest talent to bring beauty and art to the world. And I love this piece about helping families keep their heirlooms and cherish them. So that's really special. So that's really wonderful.
Thank you. This was really fun to be on, and you watched me grow from the very start of my full-time
it's
part
exciting.
on this.
It's so exciting.
This has been really
okay,
fun to
one
do.
last question. What does
Yeah.
it mean to you to thrive, Wendy?
I think thrive, not only being able to continue to do what I want to do, but also to have success in recognition, but also monetarily. To me, that's the full thrive.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the success, the recognition, and the moolah. It all works.
It does.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And as always, thank you as well to joining us. And until next time, here's to hitting all your high notes. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.